At 7:30 on September 18, 1944, Private First Class Arthur Jackson pressed his body against a coral outcrop on Peleliu Island, watching Japanese machine gun fire tear apart the Marines to his left. 19 years old. 3 days on this island. 0 confirmed kills. The Japanese had built 12 reinforced concrete pillboxes in a half-moon arc across the southern peninsula, each housing between 5 and 35 enemy soldiers. 3 days earlier, the 1st Marine Division had landed on Peleliu expecting a 4-day operation. Major General William Rupertus had told his men they would secure the island by the weekend. He was wrong by 70 days. On D-Day alone, nearly 1,300 Marines fell on the beaches. The Japanese had changed tactics. No more banzai charges. No more suicidal rushes into American machine gun fire. Instead, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had built a fortress. His 10,000 defenders waited in caves and concrete bunkers connected by hundreds of yards of tunnels. They let the Americans come to them. By September 18th, the 1st Marine Regiment had taken 70% casualties. 7 out of 10 Marines who landed with that regiment were dead or wounded. The 7th Marines, Jackson's regiment, had pushed into the southern sector. Their mission was simple: clear the Japanese defensive positions blocking the advance toward the airfield. The problem was the pillboxes. Japanese engineers had built them into the coral ridges with walls 3 feet thick. Each pillbox had overlapping fields of fire with its neighbors. Attack one position and 2 more would cut you down from the flanks. The Marines had tried grenades. The grenades bounced off. They had tried rifle fire. The bullets sparked against concrete and ricocheted into coral. They had tried rushing the gun slits. The bodies piled up in front of those concrete walls. Jackson's platoon had advanced 200 yards that morning before the left flank stalled completely. A large pillbox dominated the approach. Every time a Marine moved, that pillbox fired. The platoon could not advance. They could not retreat. 3 men had already died trying to find a way around it. The standard Marine Corps solution was to call in tanks or artillery, but the terrain on Peleliu did not allow tanks in this sector. The coral ridges were too steep, the approaches too narrow. Artillery could not hit the pillboxes without killing the Marines pinned down in front of them. Someone had to cross 150 yards of open ground, reach the pillbox, and destroy it from close range. The Japanese inside would see anyone coming. They had machine guns. They had rifles. They had grenades. The mathematics were brutal. A man running across open ground moves at roughly 15 yards per second under combat conditions. 150 yards meant 10 seconds of exposure. The Japanese Type 92 machine gun fired 450 rounds per minute. In 10 seconds, a single machine gun could put 75 bullets into that kill zone. The pillbox had at least 2 machine guns. No Marine could survive that crossing. The officers knew it. The sergeants knew it. Jackson knew it. But Jackson also knew something else. Every minute his platoon stayed pinned down, more men would die. The left flank had to move or the entire advance would collapse. Waiting for a solution that might never come was just another way of dying. Jackson loaded his Browning automatic rifle with a fresh 20-round magazine. He stuffed his pockets with as many grenades as he could carry. Then he looked at the 150 yards of open coral between him and 35 Japanese soldiers. The morning sun beat down on Peleliu. The temperature was already climbing past 100 degrees. Arthur Jackson, 19 years old, had just decided to do something that should have been impossible. He did not wait for permission. He did not ask his sergeant. He did not coordinate with the Marines on his right. He simply stood up and ran. The bar weighed 19 pounds fully loaded. Jackson carried it at hip level as he sprinted across the coral. It fired 30 caliber rounds at a rate of 550 per minute. It was not accurate from the hip, but accuracy was not the point. Volume was the point. Suppression was the point. The Japanese saw him immediately. Their Type 92 machine guns swiveled toward the running Marine. Bullets cracked past Jackson's head. Coral chips exploded around his feet. The air filled with the sound of automatic fire. Jackson fired back without stopping, sweeping the muzzle across the firing slit. His bullets could not penetrate 3 feet of concrete, but they forced the gunners to duck. They bought him seconds, and seconds were all he needed. 100 yards. 80. 60. His magazine ran dry. He dropped behind a coral boulder, slammed in a fresh magazine, and ran again. The Japanese gunners recovered. Their fire intensified. Bullets kicked up coral dust inches from his boots. 40 yards. 30. 20. At close range, the geometry of the pillbox worked against its defenders. The firing slits that gave them control of the approach also limited their angles. Jackson reached the blind spot beside the main aperture. The Japanese could hear him. They could not shoot him. Jackson had brought white phosphorus grenades and fragmentation grenades. Another Marine following his charge carried 40 pounds of plastic explosive. White phosphorus burns at 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit and cannot be extinguished with water. Jackson pulled the pin and shoved the grenade through the firing slit. The screaming started immediately. Japanese soldiers stumbled out with their uniforms on fire. Ammunition belts cooked off, rounds detonating around their waists. Jackson cut them down as they emerged. But 35 men occupied that bunker. Some retreated deeper inside. Some returned fire through secondary apertures. Jackson grabbed the explosive charge. 40 pounds of composition C2. A 30-second fuse. One chance. He shoved the package through the main opening and ran. He dove into a shell crater, curled into the coral, and covered his head. The explosion lifted the pillbox off its foundation. Concrete, logs, and bodies flew 60 feet into the air. The blast slammed into Jackson's crater. Debris rained down around him. When the dust settled, the pillbox was gone. 35 Japanese soldiers were dead. Jackson stood up, ears ringing, hands shaking, still alive. 200 yards ahead, 11 more pillboxes continued firing. The logical move was to return and report success. Jackson did not do the logical thing. He reloaded his bar, checked his grenades, and started toward the next pillbox. They could not see him. They began throwing grenades blindly over the bunker wall. Japanese Type 97 grenades had a 4-second fuse. Jackson counted the explosions, waited for the pause between throws, then moved. He reached the bunker wall and pressed his back against the concrete. His phosphorus grenades were gone. He had used them all on the first position, but he still carried fragmentation grenades. He still carried his bar. And he had learned something from the first assault. Japanese pillboxes had ventilation shafts, small openings in the roof designed to prevent carbon monoxide buildup from weapons fire. The shafts were only 4 inches wide, too small for a grenade, but not too small for a rifle barrel. Jackson climbed onto the bunker roof. He found the ventilation shaft. He shoved the muzzle of his bar into the opening and emptied an entire magazine straight down. The .30 caliber rounds ricocheted inside the concrete box. Japanese soldiers died where they stood. Jackson reloaded and fired again, 20 more rounds into the darkness below. When he dropped back to the ground, no one inside was moving. 2 pillboxes down, 10 remaining. The third and fourth positions sat close together, mutually supporting. Each one covered the other's approach. Standard Japanese defensive doctrine. Kill the men attacking your neighbor. Jackson could not assault one without being shot by the other. He solved the problem with geometry. Both bunkers faced southwest toward the Marine lines. Their firing slits covered a 120-degree arc. But directly between them, a narrow corridor existed where neither bunker could bring its weapons to bear. The corridor was only 8 feet wide. A man would have to move through it perfectly straight or catch bullets from one side or the other. Jackson sprinted the corridor at full speed. He reached the third bunker before its defenders could reposition their guns. He jammed his bar into the firing slit and fired until the magazine clicked empty. He threw his last fragmentation grenade through the aperture, then moved immediately to the fourth bunker and repeated the process. 4 pillboxes destroyed. Approximately 55 Japanese soldiers dead. Jackson had been fighting for less than 20 minutes. His ammunition was running low. His bar had jammed twice from overheating. The barrel was so hot it burned his hands through the wooden foregrip. He had no grenades left, no explosives. A logical man would have stopped, fallen back, resupplied. But Jackson had seen something during the assault on the fourth bunker. Through the smoke and dust, he saw Marines from his platoon beginning to move forward. His attack was working. The left flank was advancing. If he stopped now, the remaining 8 pillboxes would pin them down exactly as before. More men would die in front of those concrete walls. Jackson checked his ammunition. 3 magazines. 60 rounds. 8 bunkers remaining. The math no longer made sense, but Jackson moved anyway. The 5th pillbox was different. Larger than the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, smaller than the 1st, but it had something the others lacked: a rear entrance. Japanese engineers had learned from American tactics. Marines liked to attack from flanks where firing slits could not reach, so escape routes and tunnels connected pillboxes to rear trenches. If attacked, defenders could retreat, reposition, and counterattack. Jackson did not know about the tunnel. He approached as before, found the blind spot, reached the wall, prepared to climb. A Japanese soldier emerged from the ground 5 yards behind him. The rear tunnel exit was camouflaged with coral rocks and palm fronds. Jackson had walked right past it. The soldier lunged with a bayonet fixed to his Arisaka rifle. Jackson spun and fired from the hip. The bar rounds struck the soldier in the chest. He fell backward into his own tunnel, but the noise alerted the defenders. Jackson heard shouting, boots scrambling on concrete. He had seconds before more soldiers emerged. He dropped to one knee and fired directly into the tunnel entrance. The narrow passage channeled his fire. Anyone inside was hit. He burned through a full magazine in 4 seconds, slammed in his second-to-last magazine, and kept firing. When it stopped, 3 Japanese soldiers lay dead in the tunnel. The 5th pillbox fell silent. 5 down, 7 remaining, but the situation had changed. The Japanese now knew his location. They knew his tactics, and they had radios. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had built a communication network across Peleliu. Each bunker could report to command. Orders could be issued. Fire redirected. Reinforcements moved. Jackson did not know runners were already moving through tunnels. He did not know Nakagawa's officers had identified the single Marine destroying the southern perimeter. He did not know the remaining 7 pillboxes had been ordered to concentrate their fire on one man. What Jackson knew was simpler. Marines were advancing on his right. He could hear their rifles, hear sergeants shouting orders. The defensive line was breaking. The Japanese were reacting instead of controlling. The 6th pillbox sat on elevated ground, a coral ridge 15 feet higher than the surrounding terrain. Its defenders could see Jackson from 200 yards away. There was no blind spot. Clear sight lines in every direction. Jackson had 1 magazine left. 20 rounds. A Marine rifle squad appeared on his right, 6 men pushing through the gap he had opened. Their sergeant saw Jackson, saw the bunker, saw the impossible geometry. He gave no orders. He simply pointed and led his men forward. 6 Marines and Jackson attacked from 2 directions at once. The Japanese gunners chose the larger threat and focused on the rifle squad. Jackson reached the bunker while they were distracted. He climbed the ridge from the blind side, found the ventilation shaft, shoved his bar inside, and fired his last 20 rounds. He made every bullet count. The 6th pillbox fell silent. The rifle squad took casualties. 2 wounded, 1 dead, but they were still advancing. Jackson looked at his empty weapon, then at the 6 remaining pillboxes. He needed ammunition, grenades, help. For the first time since the assault began, Arthur Jackson was not alone. The Japanese response came within minutes. Nakagawa's command post tracked the destruction of 6 positions in under 30 minutes. 1 Marine had killed roughly 60 soldiers. The southern perimeter was collapsing. Nakagawa dispatched a counterattack force, 40 soldiers from reserve. Seal the breach. Kill the Marine. Restore the line. Jackson did not know they were coming. He scavenged ammunition from the dead. Arisaka rounds were useless for his bar, but the Japanese carried grenades. He collected 7 Type 97 grenades and 2 Type 99 magnetic mines. He found no bar magazines, but he recovered an M1 Garand from a fallen Marine. Same caliber, Jackson stripped the clips and hand-loaded individual rounds into empty bar magazines. Slow, tedious work, but it gave him 40 rounds. 2 magazines. The rifle squad regrouped nearby. Their sergeant, wounded in the shoulder, still gave orders with hand signals. The squad had lost 1 man dead and 2 wounded. 3 Marines remained combat effective. Jackson and the 3 Marines prepared to assault the 7th pillbox when the Japanese counterattack hit. 40 soldiers emerged from a tunnel entrance 200 yards north. They moved in 2 columns. No banzai charge, no screaming, just disciplined infantry advancing through the coral ridges with rifles ready. The Marines saw them first. The squad's barman opened fire. His weapon jammed after 3 rounds. Coral dust had fouled the mechanism. He dropped behind cover and began clearing the stoppage. Jackson stepped into the gap. He braced his bar against the coral outcrop and fired controlled bursts. 5 rounds. Pause. 5 rounds. Pause. He could not afford to waste ammunition. Every bullet had to hit. The Japanese formation scattered. Soldiers dove behind rocks. Others pushed forward, trying to close the distance. Their fire intensified. Bullets cracked overhead. Coral fragments sprayed Jackson's face. The 3 Marines added their garrons to the fight. 8-round clips. Aimed fire. The distinctive ping of empty clips punctuated the chaos. Japanese soldiers fell. 10, 15. But more kept coming. They had numbers, discipline, and orders to retake this ground at any cost. Jackson's first magazine ran dry. He reloaded his last 20 rounds. The Marines were down to their final clips. The squad's barman cleared his jam but had only 1 magazine left. The math had turned against them again. 4 Americans with perhaps 60 rounds between them against 25 Japanese soldiers still advancing. Then the coral ridge behind the Japanese erupted in explosions. The 7th Marines had pushed 3 rifle platoons through the gaps Jackson had created. 40 men with rifles, bars, and grenades. They had circled behind the Japanese counterattack force and waited for the moment. That moment was now. The Japanese were caught between 2 American forces. Jackson and 3 Marines in front, 40 Marines behind. The crossfire was devastating. Japanese soldiers fell in clusters. Some tried to retreat toward the tunnel entrance. Marines cut them down before they reached it. In less than 3 minutes, the counterattack was over. 40 Japanese soldiers lay dead on the coral. The southern perimeter's last reserve was gone. 6 pillboxes remained. Now Jackson had ammunition, grenades, and 40 Marines ready to follow him into the final positions. The largest bunker complex on the southern peninsula sat 300 yards ahead. 3 pillboxes arranged in a triangle, mutually supporting and heavily manned. The Japanese had concentrated their remaining defenders there. Jackson checked his weapon, checked his grenades, and looked at the Marines forming up around him. The last fight was about to begin. The triangle formation was the strongest Japanese defensive position on the southern peninsula. 3 pillboxes, each covering the approaches to the other 2. Roughly 30 soldiers divided among them, plus rifle pits and fighting holes connecting the positions. Standard Marine doctrine called for preparatory bombardment before assaulting a fortified position of this size. Naval gunfire, air support, at minimum a mortar barrage. None of that was available. The naval guns had shifted elsewhere. Marine corsairs were attacking targets on the northern ridges. Mortar teams could not fire without hitting Marines already advancing. 43 Americans would take the triangle with rifles, grenades, and 1 man who had already proven concrete could not stop him. Jackson organized the assault in under 2 minutes. Hand signals. Pointing. 3 groups, 1 pillbox each. Jackson would take the center bunker, the largest, with the best fields of fire. The Marines moved out at 0847. They had been fighting over an hour. The temperature climbed past 105 degrees. Dehydration set in. Men showed signs of heat exhaustion. They moved anyway. Jackson led 12 Marines toward the center pillbox. 60 yards of open ground. No cover. The Japanese opened fire halfway across. 2 men fell in the first 3 seconds, 1 dead, 1 wounded. The remaining 10 kept running. They had learned. Speed was survival. Jackson reached the bunker wall first. He pressed against the concrete and pulled the pin on a Type 97 grenade. For second fuse. Counted to 2. Threw it through the firing slit. Ducked. The explosion silenced one machine gun. The second kept firing. Marines outside were dying. Jackson pulled another grenade, counted, threw. Another explosion. Silence. He climbed to the roof, found the ventilation shaft, shoved his bar inside, and emptied the magazine. Screams echoed, then stopped. The center pillbox was dead. On the left, the first assault group reached their target. A Marine corporal shoved a satchel charge through the firing slit. The explosion collapsed half the roof. Survivors stumbled out into rifle fire. On the right, the third group struggled. Their pillbox had a reinforced entrance facing away from the Marine advance. Japanese soldiers inside threw grenades faster than the Americans could close. Jackson did not hesitate. He sprinted across open ground between bunkers. Bullets kicked up coral. One grazed his thigh. He kept running. He reached the blind side, found the ventilation shaft, dropped his last 2 grenades inside. The explosions killed everyone. 3 pillboxes destroyed in under 4 minutes. The triangle had fallen, but Jackson was bleeding. The graze was deeper than he thought. Blood soaked his dungarees. His left leg weakened. He looked south. 3 pillboxes remained between the Marines and full control of the peninsula. Jackson had killed roughly 50 Japanese soldiers, destroyed 9 bunkers, and been wounded. The logical move was to stop. He loaded his last magazine and walked south. A Marine sergeant grabbed his arm, pointed at the blood, pointed toward the aid station. Jackson pulled free. 3 pillboxes remained. He was not finished. The 10th fell at 0912. 5 defenders killed by grenades dropped through the ventilation shaft. His leg kept bleeding. A torn strip of fabric slowed nothing. The 11th fell at 0921 with help. Jackson was out of ammunition. A Marine named Henderson brought a satchel charge. Jackson placed it. 7 Japanese soldiers died in the blast. The 12th was last. It sat on a rise overlooking the beach where the 7th Marines had landed 3 days earlier. Its guns had killed at least 15 Americans. Its commander had watched 11 bunkers fall that morning. He knew. Jackson approached from the northeast. His leg barely worked. He dragged it. Blood loss blurred his vision. The coral shimmered in the heat. 3 Marines followed him. 1 with grenades. 1 with a flamethrower. 1 with a bar. The Japanese opened fire at 100 yards. The bar Marines suppressed them. Jackson and the others advanced. At 50 yards, the flamethrower operator moved forward. Effective range was 40 yards. Jackson took the bar and fired controlled bursts. The recoil buckled his wounded leg. He dropped to one knee and kept firing. The flamethrower reached range. A 3-second burst arced through the air and poured into the firing slit. The screaming lasted less than 10 seconds. At 0933, the 12th pillbox fell silent. Jackson collapsed against a coral boulder. His dungarees were soaked with blood. His hands shook from exhaustion and adrenaline. His bar lay across his lap, the barrel still hot from the final assault. In approximately 90 minutes, Private First Class Arthur Jackson had destroyed 12 Japanese pillboxes and killed 50 enemy soldiers. He had broken the southern defensive line. He had enabled his platoon's advance. He had changed the tactical situation across an entire sector of the island. Navy corpsmen reached him within minutes. They cut away his blood-soaked trousers and dressed the wound. The bullet had passed cleanly through muscle without striking bone or artery. Jackson would keep his leg. He would also keep fighting. 3 days later, still limping, Jackson was back in combat. Word of his assault spread through the 7th Marines within hours. Officers who had observed the attack described a single Marine charging positions that normally required company-level assaults. Pillboxes falling one after another, 50 Japanese soldiers dead. The regimental commander forwarded the report to division. Division sent it to corps. By the time Peleliu was declared secure on November 27th, Arthur Jackson's name had reached the desk of Admiral Chester Nimitz. The Medal of Honor recommendation was submitted in early October. The citation detailed every pillbox, every kill, every moment of the 90-minute assault. The paperwork moved with unusual speed. On October 5, 1945, President Harry Truman stood in the White House. 13 months had passed since Peleliu. The war was over. Japan had surrendered. Arthur Jackson, now 20 years old, stood at attention as the president placed the Medal of Honor around his neck and read the citation aloud. 12 pillboxes destroyed. 50 enemy soldiers killed. Conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Jackson returned to Oregon after the ceremony. He had a medal, a limp that never fully healed, and memories that would follow him for the rest of his life. Arthur Jackson did not speak about Peleliu for decades. He returned to Portland, married, raised a family, and worked for the United States Postal Service delivering mail. Neighbors knew him as a quiet man with a slight limp. Most had no idea what sat in his closet. Jackson remained in the military reserves, transferred from the Marine Corps to the Army Reserve, and continued serving through the Korean War era. He rose to the rank of captain, trained younger soldiers, and never spoke of the 12 pillboxes. In 1961, Jackson was stationed at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base as a security officer during rising Cold War tensions. On September 30th, a Cuban worker named Ruben Sabargo attacked him. Jackson shot and killed Sabargo in self-defense. The incident became tangled in Cold War politics. Jackson requested a court-martial to clear his name. The Marine Corps denied the request. In 1962, he left active service, the silence surrounding the incident haunting him for years. He had killed 50 men in combat and received the Medal of Honor. He had killed 1 man in self-defense and received nothing. Time eventually restored perspective. Jackson continued reserve service until 1984, retiring as a captain with 40 years of combined military service. He moved to Idaho and began speaking publicly. He visited schools, addressed veterans groups, and spoke honestly about courage, fear, and the cost of survival. In 2011, at age 86, Jackson visited the USS Peleliu, an amphibious assault ship named for the battle where he earned his medal. He spoke to more than 1,000 sailors and Marines, told them about the landing, the pillboxes, and the men who never came home. He presented the ship's captain with his Medal of Honor flag. Jackson was the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from Peleliu. On June 14, 2017, Arthur Jackson died in Boise, Idaho, at 92 years old. Marine Corps pallbearers carried his remains. Full military honors marked his burial. 50 Japanese soldiers had tried to stop one 19-year-old Marine on September 18, 1944. Every one of them failed. The Marine lived another 73 years.